What is going on, everyone? It is Tyler McKinney back here again, and today we're going to get back into the XFL. You know what we've been doing. You know what we do here. So let's not waste any time, and let's get right into it. So I want to go ahead, and I want to take some time, and we're going to go over kind of the things that have been happening with the XFL, but I want to start it all off with Oliver Luck. If you haven't been paying attention, and if you didn't watch my previous video, hey, go ahead and watch my previous video on kind of what's happened over the past week in the XFL, but I want to piggyback off of that because Oliver Luck has been going around as the mini camps have been taking off and as they've been kind of progressing throughout kind of this past week. He's been going around to the different areas and they've been having kind of these media events and kind of this meet the fans, meet the press, getting the teams out there. People can kind of come and see what all is going on with each one of the teams and the communities in which they are. And so Oliver Luck has been going around to all these different communities. And a couple days ago, he was in Tampa Bay. He was meeting with the media and all of the fans for the Vipers. And so he met with the Tampa Bay Times, and they did a Q&A with him. And if you've been following him, he's been giving little bits of tidbits of information kind of as he's been going down the trail. So it's been really interesting to just kind of see these kind of, the more and more he talks, the more and more information we get. And it's not like he's like leaking these things or just accidentally saying these things. You can definitely tell that this is a strategic move by him and kind of their PR team to kind of let things out of the bag just slowly and just kind of let people put things together as things are going on. And the cool thing is like if you don't pay attention, you miss some of these things and some of these really interesting things that have a lot of meaning behind them. So let's go ahead and let's dive into that. All right. If you're here for the whole thing of the XFL blocking the NFL for not allowing two players to sign with the NFL. We'll get to that, but I promise you'll want this information beforehand because it all really leads up to exactly what the XFL is doing. And so he kind of takes it and they kind of go into there in that Q&A. So I don't want to lead off with that because I think that you'll appreciate the information much more once we get there. So he starts off and they start talking about the state of the XFL. And he really kind of goes through and kind of lays everything out, that this has been a process for them and that this isn't just something that is happening overnight. They're trying to quickly put out that no, they've been methodically for the past 2 years really been setting things in place to prepare themselves for February. So that everything's in place for February, that they don't miss any details, and that everything is going to be covered. And the whole purpose for them is not to create some shenanigans, not to create just some, spectacle. What they've been tasked with is they've been tasked with the responsibility of putting together a good football product to put out on the field. And that's what he really has kind of really been trying to hammer home is that, yes, they've been doing all of these other things and that they have all these pieces in place, but the main focus and the main function of everything is centered around really, really good football. So they transition from there and they go in and then it kind of leads into the AAF. And really, he's kind of asked, well, what have you learned from the downfall of the AAF? And I think that we just have some fascinating things that come out here because I think that it's really just a neat, kind of interaction. He's not very, he takes it, he's not critical of the AAF, but he is understand what the AAF did wrong. And they're kind of taking it to the next level. In my previous video, I mentioned that they're doing this whole media thing and social media and opening things up. The AAF never did that. Now, he doesn't go and say that in this, but there's the thing that he's very crucial about. So he talks about that they need to put good product out on the field. And one of the things that they learned about the AAF folding was the fact that you need to have good quarterback play. If you do not have good quarterback play, you will not succeed in football today. It's not going to happen. And so what they do is he takes the example of Josh Johnson and how he was one of the quarterbacks that was with the AAF, but because of the way that the AAF was structured, it allowed players, if they had an NFL opportunity, to leave and sign with the NFL and to go virtually go and play with the NFL with no penalty, no nothing. They didn't have to honor their contract with the AAF. And that really hurt the AAF because Josh Johnson, who was actually the very first pick of their quarterback draft that they had, before he even played a down, did anything, I don't even think he ended up in training camp. He ended up signing with the Redskins and was gone and was no longer there. And so what it did is then it brought up the whole thing of the quarterback play is very, very critical, and they understand that. The next thing that I thought that was really, really fascinating is that he mentions that the quarterback play is crucial and that they have some quarterbacks from the AAF, but a majority of their quarterbacks are not. And I find that just really, really neat. And he's making a point here. If you can't read between the lines, I will go ahead and do it for you. Our quarterback play is going to be much, much better than the AAF. Just wait and see. We're going to have some electrifying, high-flying, high-powered offenses because we've decided to get guys that weren't in the AAF and that are more talented than the overall crop of players that they had in the AAF. He didn't come out and say it, but I'll just come out and say it for him because that's pretty much what he said in that statement that he said. Now, getting back to the whole Josh Johnson thing. So the whole Josh Johnson thing, it does kind of bring up the fact that they went and they blocked the Detroit Lions from being able to sign Josh Johnson. But it's like any other contract. If a player's under contract, he's not allowed to play with any other team, period. That's how it works. You can't go to another company if you have a contract with a company. You can't do that. And so that's what's happened here. He has a contract with the XFL. And so, it brings up the whole point of, we had two more players. So we had Phillip Walker, who is with the Houston Roughnecks, and then we also had Landry Jones, who's with the Dallas Renegades. Both of them were approached by Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh wanted to sign them, but they had already both signed contracts with the XFL, meaning that they are under contract through the end of May to play with the XFL. And so it was really interesting that this comes up again. And I think that it's really neat. One, I like it on two levels. The first level is listen, I'm a Cowboys fan. I can't stand the Steelers. I don't like the Steelers. And then two, my AFC team are the Cleveland Browns. And so that's even like a double thing. So for the Steelers not to be able to sign players that they want to sign, I love that every day. Now, actually getting back to what matters for all of us here is that the XFL is not going to lose talent to the NFL. They are not willing to give up talent to the NFL, which I think is a huge, huge thing. Meaning they're not going to have happen to them what happened to the AAF. Meaning the NFL come in and pick over all of their guys, take the best cream of the crop, and then leave them back with the leftovers. They're not going to let that happen. What they're going to do is they're going to make sure that their assets, which are the players, because remember, it's football on the field first. The football product on the field is first for them. So what is your main asset in that? It's the players. So they're going to protect their main asset and not allow the NFL to come in and steal it, which I think is a good thing. I've already talked about it in other videos numerous times. I don't think that this is a bad thing. I'm not one of those people out there that are crying, oh, they could make more money in the NFL and blah, 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 this and blah, 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 that. Listen, I look at things as they're big boys. They sign a contract. They need to uphold their contract, and they need to go from there. So I thought that was really neat. And I really, really like that the XFL is standing their ground, And I really like that they're setting themselves up. They're pretty much, they're not saying that we are in direct competition with the NFL. But what they are saying is that we are not going to let the NFL take advantage of us just because they're the bigger, they're the bigger giant, they're the bigger, they're the bigger brand in the room. We're going to acknowledge that they're bigger, and we're going to work with them to the best of our ability, but we're not going to just take it from them. And I think that that's a good thing. And as a business, you like to see that stuff. I like to see that they're standing up for themselves and that they're keeping their, they're kind of keeping, like I said, their assets. Now, one of the other things that came up, which was really interesting, and it was asked about the, players that are playing well, do you worry about them doing kind of like what college players are doing and sitting out bowl games because they don't want to hurt their draft stock or they don't want to? And, he said, yeah, that's kind of a concern, but I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. And again, these guys are guys under contract to play, to where they might sit out the last couple games. I think they're really trying to give the NFL as much tape as they can. So a lot of these players, they really haven't played a lot of competitive football in like 2 or 3 years. I mean, it's been since their college days that we've really gotten to see them on the field. And we all know that the college game and the pro game, can be different. And really, we don't know what the pro game for the XFL is going to look like. So it really is really hard to try to figure out how these guys are going to do because they've really only been on practice squads and we really haven't seen them play. And so for them to get actual game footage and game film is really valuable to them to really step up their career. So I'm kind of like Oliver Luck. I'm not going to worry about losing any sleep over this one. It is interesting, though. So as they're kind of talking about these players and the players, they start mentioning about that the XFL doesn't have the star power. And I find it very fascinating that Oliver Luck kind of takes that. And so they pretty much they say, the star power is kind of in the coaches, but you don't really have any star power players right now. And so they asked him, how are you going to overcome that obstacle? And Oliver Luck says, don't worry, that's going to shift. And the way that he says that and his reaction to it, there are things that he knows that we don't and that they haven't released out to the public yet, and that maybe there's another crop of players that they're thinking that they're going to get. And I also think that they have some processes in place and some things that they're planning for the future that they haven't put out there yet and that they're not going to, because I don't think that they're going to show their hand. They're not going to show their cards to the NFL so that the NFL can kind of swoop in and change things on them. What do I mean by that? Well, first, let's look at this whole crop of players. We already know that there are players who are on practice squads right now in the NFL that are making money from the NFL that would like to play in the XFL. So as the seasons dwindle down for these teams and these players start to get released because they're not technically under a contract. They're under a week-to-week contract. So they're only getting paid for the weeks that they're there on the practice squad. So as soon as that's done, they're open to join these XFL teams to where I think by January, we're really going to start to see some of these more talented guys end up in training camps and possibly end up on some of these XFL team rosters. So you have that. The second thing that I want to kind of address with this is I really think that this next upcoming year, they're really being hush-hush, but I think that they might actually make some plays at some college football players, meaning to get them to come and play in the XFL and use the XFL as their season to get them into the NFL draft. That's kind of what I'm looking at. From my standpoint, I think that they're really going to try to attack some of that to where I don't think that they're wanting to show their hand and their cards just yet on that, because I think they're wanting the NFL to not have a chance to maybe shift their thought process and starting to allow younger players to declare for the NFL draft, so that the XFL has these crop of players that they can, throw some money in front of them and possibly get them to actually play in the XFL as opposed to playing their senior year, or their junior year, or something of that nature with it, to where they can be eligible to play in the XFL and do that. So I think it'll be interesting to see that. But he also takes it to a third place, and I think that this is really neat. Because he goes, we have some guys like Cardale Jones, who I agree with him on this. I really think that Cardale's going to become a star because of this league. I think he has the arm, I think he has the talent, and I really don't think that he's really been given an opportunity in the NFL to really succeed. And you can definitely tell by the way that he played in the preseason that he's definitely coming along. And that he has progressed since when he came out of college, to where I think that he is going to be a star in this league, and that he's really going to make a name for himself. But I think that it's really interesting because, Oliver Luck, he makes this comment that, I think that stars are going to emerge from this season. And he talks about Cardale, and he said it's really interesting because Cardale is at that place where he either needs to make it or he's not going to. And so it's kind of like last chance you for Cardale and some of these other guys. They either really need to show that they can be a professional quarterback, or really they've run out of shots, to where Oliver Luck talks about the drama, that's in that, and just kind of how neat it is to follow that and look at that. And so I thought that was like a really neat piece, and kind of led us kind of into kind of just from a top view of where they're looking at with personnel and how they're moving and going to be shaking things, which is really cool. And then they talk about like Johnny Manziel and Trent Richardson, and it's kind of funny. It's another backhanded dig at the AAF without coming out and saying it. They talk about how they didn't want guys like Johnny Manziel and Trent Richardson, and why they aren't playing, because those were AAF guys. And he just flat out says neither one of those guys, they both were invited. Johnny didn't, I think he didn't show up or whatever, and then he said Trent Richardson, he was at our combines and that, and he was in the draft pool, and they got a chance to look at him, and Oliver Luck just said flat out, our guys are just better. And I would have to agree with him. When I watched Trent Richardson in the AAF, I really just thought he was just a bowling ball that could get 2 yards. And when Birmingham needed 2 yards at the goal line, they gave him the ball, and that's how he scored all those touchdowns. He really he has no ball vision, hole vision carrying the ball. He just kind of, you give him the ball. He's told where to run. He runs there. If there's a hole there, great. If not, he just runs into the back of a whole bunch of people. He has a hard time finding a hole, and that's been his problem throughout his whole career, and it hasn't changed. But I just thought that was really neat, that fact that they're differentiating themselves from the AAF and just saying, listen, the talent that we have here and what we're dealing with, we are not the AAF, and we're doing things differently. They look different. They've set themselves up differently, and it shows. And that's just another example that they use. And they talk about officiating and how they're really working on that. And I think that it's really neat. Okay, so this goes into the whole football reimagined thing. And it's not just changing, some rules here and there. They're really trying to make the game faster, but not for the sake of the game. Meaning, like right now in the NFL, the reffing, the officiating is terrible. They're missing calls left and right, and they're bad missed calls. And these are things to where the college game would go back and they would review, and that they would get right and overturn it. And if you ask me, I would rather stop play and have the game done right, as opposed to keep the game going and have an egregious call like a missed touchdown that we just had, a week or so ago with the Patriots. And there's been many, many other things. And just to come out and say, well, they've had it, going their way in the past, and, this is just getting them back. That's not the point. The point is we want the right call every time, the best that we can. And so if we can do that. So what I like is that they're taking those things into account. So they're trying to keep the game moving faster and smoother, so the game isn't a slow, laborious process, but also trying to still make the officiating work well and really try to make the game easier for the officials to call, which I think is really neat. Like, one of the things they're looking at is changing it from having 2 feet in to having 1 feet in like college ball is. Because it's 1 foot in is a whole lot easier to call and to see than having both feet in and figuring out how that all works out with 1 foot in and that with it. So that's just kind of one example of things, but you can tell that they've been taking the time and preparing, and that they've been putting people in place to take care of these things, so that at the end of the day, everything is line and everybody's doing their job to accomplish the main goal of putting a good product out on the football field, and everybody's helping that, whether it be the equipment staff, whether it be the social media managers and those who are managing that, whether it be the coaches, whether it be those officiating on the field, whether it be the executives, the presidents. They're all doing their part in their little piece of it to really bring it all together and make sure that they're not missing out on any little pieces, and that they're really filling all the holes. And it really is showing. And this whole officiating thing is a really neat thing to me. And the other thing too is, like, they're also kind of showing kind of the sports betting community as well, like, what their game's going to be like. So they said part of the reason why the LA Wildcats are in they're in Las Vegas for their mini camp is they're showing Vegas what their game is like, so that they can see what's different between their game and the NFL game, so that they can do a better job of more accurately having betting lines and things like that for the games and stuff. So because it seems to be to them that Vegas wants to do that. The XFL, pretty much what they've said is what do you want from us, and we'll try to give it to you when in regards to Vegas. So they're, Vegas is kind of they're using this kind of mini camp as a way that they can kind of get this relationship up off of the ground and try to figure each other out, and where they want to go in the future, and to where the XFL can kind of give Vegas what they want, which I think was a really good thing and a really neat thing. And so I thought that was pretty cool. And it was just a really neat kind of overall, just a lot of really good tidbits and a lot of things that we could come away with. And I was really taken back by how much information was in there, and actually like how much we're getting out of this. I mean, it is just a lot of information. I've just been really surprised with how much information we're getting and how much is coming out. And, all the pieces are starting to fall into place, and we're starting to see all of the kind of the things come and start to line up with the XFL. And I'm getting super, super excited about it. I think that it's really neat. So if you haven't been following along with everything that's happening with the XFL, you need to get on your social media. You need to start following them on social media. You need to start kind of watching YouTube. Continue to watch my videos. I will definitely be giving all the content out and that. But it's really neat and fun and exciting, and there's a lot of buzz around the XFL right now, and so it's a pretty cool thing with it. I know that this video was long, but there was a lot that I wanted to cover, because I just felt like that there was a lot of really good nuggets in that interview that we just couldn't let sit there. So all of you that are still here, I really appreciate you watching. If it's your first time watching, thanks for watching this video. Hopefully you liked it. Hopefully you got some good information, and hopefully you'll be back. If you're a return viewer, I love you. I really do appreciate you, and I thank you for watching all the videos that you do. You are the guys and gals that keep keep me doing this and make this so much fun to do. And if you haven't yet, please consider subscribing. And remember, leave me those comments with all of your thoughts, and we'll have a discussion down in the comment section. You know I love interacting with you guys there. All right, well, I know that you're busy. I know that I'm busy, so let's get on out of here. You have a good night. Bye.